Tēnā koe te roa, te whānau. I'm going to talk about the representation review. Once it's 6 yearly and it's 3 yearly. I read in the newspaper, South Waikato News, and the representation review referring to the Māori seats. But it's broader than that, and so in a sense a brickbat to both the In Touch as well as the paper, because it includes the community boards and it wasn't mentioned. And if it's not mentioned in the paper, the community doesn't know about it. But just going back to the gambling thing earlier on, that's been an interest of mine for the last 10 years. I used to have the Salvation Army who would be quite supportive with regards to coming along and giving submissions. The government took off problem gambling from a problem gambling organisation and gave it to the Salvation Army, effectively muting them. And then I was the lone voice for the last 10 years with regards to this. So it's quite interesting to watch what's happening in the newspapers. I've analysed it. The simplest thing, Miss Deputy or Mayor, is to go to the government and ask them to rechip all the machines, 100% in, 100% out. And central government can do that. At the moment they take 7% and a third goes to charity, a third goes to government and tax, and a third goes to keep the power on. If you 100% in, 100% out, what happens there is nothing goes to charity, nothing goes to the government and tax, and nothing goes to keeping them going. And the punters get everything, they don't lose anything from the community. That's the simplest way. You don't have to be for gambling or against gambling, just allow the 100% in, 100% out. So that's the simplest thing, through central government, and then we don't have to have these internal local sort of conflicts. So getting back to the representation review, 28th of February, getting 5%. I did ask for community boards, and what happened was it was turned down by this council, the former council. I appealed it and called the local government commission in, and I must say that our local MP, Louise Upston, I think must have spoken in cabinet about it, because the Keys government went and completely cleaned out the local government commission who came in. So they were all newbies and they'd never done anything before to hear the appeal. They came back with, we'll leave it status quo, which is no community board for Tokoroa or Patauru. That left me having to go to the High Court to try and appeal it. Wrong decision. They then went off to Auckland. For the next 2 years they're going to work out, shall they go back to 8 councils again with 8 mayors. So they really lost the opportunity to do something worthwhile in New Zealand here. And if they had overturned it and said, no, we should have a community board in South Waikato and Tokoroa and Patauru, then the council, with its funding and resources, can then appeal it to the High Court. That would have been a sensible decision to have made. Okay, so now we're in the same situation. So if I want to champion this, I have to go out and get 5% of signatures from the community and then present it to council to then have a referendum to see if the community wants to have that. Now, that's not in the newspaper. They talk about Māori seats. Well, that's 20% of the population there, and 1% that speaks Te Reo Māori. So by not talking about the 100% of the population, which is the community boards, I think it's quite disingenuous. Now, the job of council, especially the staff, is to give all the options to the community and for the community to then respond. What we have got is what the political will is. The council staff are then told only give out what the political will is of information and leave 85% of that information out from the community, and the community can only make a decision, which is what the political had status quo is. Now that, to me, you need to tell your staff they're not allowed to do that. They have to give all the information to the community. So we're an informed and educated community, because it's called pulling the wool over the community's eyes. We're starting to see some of these percolating through, and you're starting to hear some grumbles from the community because it's a systemic thing that's happening, and central government and the Keys government was facilitating it as well, and that's been cleared out. The ombudsman has been changed and we're starting to get it, but it has to come down to this level. We have to do a better job, and that's why I raised the representation review. So next week's paper, it should have, if you want one, and I don't even have to get 5%. You guys can make the decision to have the referendum. Do we want a community board in Tokoroa? You make the decision. It costs $30,000 and it's value for money. Forcing the community to go out every 3 years or 6 years and do it. So I'd ask you to spend $30,000, ask if the community wants a community board. It's not like people who are educated at university to explain it to the community. You've got the resources to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Thank you for your thoughts on that. Did you, just a comment, the decision to have Māori wards or Māori seats on council, that is the first decision. That then triggers, if we decided to make that change, that then triggers the full representation review. So the decision after the consultation with the public and hearings and people coming and making submissions, with all that information in front of us, we made the decision not to go with designated Māori seats. We were going to look at other ways with better engagement with Māori and iwi that was proposed to us. So then that didn't trigger, because we didn't do that, the rest of the representation review doesn't happen. So
it's at odds with what I've just said. So you need to research what I've just said and find out what the facts are. Because otherwise you've been sold something that's that 15% and it's not the 100%. But thank you for that comment.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Councillor Shorten?
How many, you say you want a community board, how many representatives on the community board would you like?
Yes, I do want a community board. Just to answer that question, we did get 700 people signing it to get to the 5%, and some people had signed it twice, and that was taken to the police. So the indication of having that discussion is out there in the community. So your question is more exact. Bigger picture is let the community have the chance to say if they want a community board or not. That representation review that Her Worship said is able to go out. The Māori seats are one thing, but you can have a representation review every 3 years if you choose. You're forced to do it every 6, or I can force with community to get that 5% and force you to do it. I want you to do it on your own bat. It's a good thing to do in 3 years in between. It's a really good thing to do.
Thank you.